I dabbled in the tour guiding side during my college years, but after college, it's a family rule that our board of advisors had established for my generation Gen 3 to the Sullivan family. We had to work outside the business for at least 3 years after we graduated university. So I did do that in a completely different space, tech space, publicly traded company. As soon as my 3 years was up, I came in and I started doing tour design and for the Eastern US product.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Travel Trends. This is your host, Dan Christian, and I'm thrilled to continue our deep dive into the world of guided touring. And today is a very special episode because I have the chance to speak with the CEO of Collette, Jaclyn Leibl-Cote. Now, a bit of context for today's conversation is I got to know her husband, Christian, over the past year. He's become a big fan of the Travel Trends podcast, and him and the team kindly agreed to sponsor season 5. So we're thrilled to have this partnership. But actually, I really wanted to have, as part of season 5, a deep dive into the world of guided travel. And I planned to interview Christian. So I reached out to Christian to schedule time to interview. And I just said to him, is there any chance that Jaclyn might be able to join us? And he was like, by all means, interview Jaclyn. It was definitely the right decision, Christian, and all of our listeners, as you'll hear today, because this is a extraordinary family-owned company, and she took over the helm in the last few years. So I have the opportunity in our discussion today to get her backstory in addition to the backstory on Collette, how she came into the business and when, and how she grew up in the business on the product side, which I really find fascinating because that's such an important part of multi-day guided touring is the product development process. So we get into quite a bit of detail about her role and the focus on product. And then we talk about all the latest developments at Collette, because when I think about guided touring, one of the categories that really appeals to me is small group. And it's actually one of the biggest developments they've had in recent years and is having incredible growth, as the team had highlighted to me. I actually have quite a few colleagues that have gone over to work with Collette in the last few years and absolutely love it. And I now understand why, having the chance to get to know some of their executive team. But I think over the course of this season, most of our listeners have had a chance to get to know a little bit more about Collette from all the ads that we've had running our series. But the one other personal connection I wanted to make is that my father-in-law just booked his first Collette trip. He booked it last week on his 75th birthday, and he is so excited to be going to Japan this September with Collette. I'm now working on getting my mom booked next, and I'm hoping to join her. And the reason that I wanted to share that is because not only am I an avid multi-day tour traveler, but my family is as well, and my extended family. And I certainly strongly believe it's the best way to experience a destination, especially with these small group offerings that progressive tour operators like Collette have introduced. I not only love this category, but I'm very bullish on its potential, as I shared a few stats in our opening episode last week about the 20% growth forecasted for the next decade, given all the demographic changes and consumer interest in this style of travel. So there's many winds blowing in the direction of multi-day touring, and companies like Collette are seeing incredible growth. So we get into quite a bit of detail about that today. So I'm really looking forward to bringing this conversation together. I just want to make sure that I do highlight that all of these episodes are available in clips and highlights on our social channels. So you can check them out at Travel Trends Podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And I also wanted to mention, given how bullish I am on this space, the sponsor for this series, I'm actually an investor and an advisor with Tour Optima. And for those of you that are in the multi-day tour space that aren't familiar with Tour Optima, you definitely need to be, because Ben and his team have built the ultimate communication platform that's really tailored specifically for tour operators. It's all about keeping guests happy, so maintaining seamless communication with guides and drivers and office staff. It's about reducing costs by automating manual communication flows, streamlining communications. Their two-way automated messaging works on almost every platform from email to WhatsApp. And then the big reward is the repeat bookings that clients have seen through being able to do upsells and cross-sells to boost revenue. Everything you need from communication, coordination, and automation is built into one platform. So you can definitely take my word for it as an investor and an advisor. So head over to touroptima.com for more details and reach out to Ben directly, ben@touroptima.com, to schedule a demo anytime. We'll be right back. Hey travelers, are you looking to book your next adventure? Then you have to meet our good friends at Flight Center. the travel-obsessed expert ready to make your next dream trip a reality. For over 40 years, they've been opening up the world to travelers from the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and now Flight Centre Canada is celebrating an incredible milestone, 30 years of helping Canadians explore the globe. From their first store in Vancouver in 1995 to becoming the official travel agency partner of the Toronto Raptors this year, they've been at the forefront of delivering travel experiences. At Flight Centre, travel is more than a passion. It's their expertise. From flights and accommodations to cruises and tours and even business travel, they handle it all. Whether it's crafting a tailor-made trip or tackling group bookings, they've got you covered. Plus, with exclusive perks like their new Bundle and Save, $500 on tour and cruise packages, there's never been a better time to plan your getaway. From the smallest getaways to the biggest bucket list trips, your travel goals are just a call or a click away. Visit flightcenter.ca/travel trends to explore the latest deals, learn about emerging travel trends, and start planning your next trip. Hey, travel advisors, are you ready to offer your clients truly amazing global travel experiences that they will never forget? Well, then you have to meet our friends at Collette, the most trusted name in guided travel since 1918. With tours across all 7 continents and 5 distinct travel styles, from small groups to small ship cruising, Collette really has a tour for every kind of traveler. Colette's in-destination designers are passionate travelers and regional experts. They curate experiences that go beyond the surface. Think dining in a local's home, connecting with local communities, and truly immersing yourself in the destination's culture. That is what Collette is all about. No cookie-cutter itineraries here. No endless hotel hopping. You'll spend an average of 2 to 3 nights in a centrally located accommodation. It is the way to travel in 2025 and beyond. So it is time to make sure your clients have the opportunity to experience Collette. Don't just book a trip. Dive deeper into the destination. Create memories with Collette. Travel crafted by travelers for travelers. For more information and to discover how Collette can delight your clients, check out Collette.com. That's Collette, COLLETTE.com. And now, back to the show. Now, let's bring Jaclyn Leibl-Cote into the conversation. I'm thrilled to have you here, Jaclyn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Dan. Really excited to be here.
Awesome. Now, there's a number of reasons I'm keen to have you on. One of them is obviously you are a strong female leader in this space. I have a great respect for your company and the family-owned business that you guys have operated. So I'd love to start with that because I think that is such an important part of the Collette story, and having the opportunity to speak to you now to understand how this business came to be and how you've now taken over and are leading the charge. So if you wouldn't mind, give us a bit of background on Collette and the family business.
So it became a family business. Well, it always was. I guess Jack Collette founded it in 1918. My grandfather met him along the way. He worked in the railroad, and they crossed paths, and he said, look, if you're ever looking to sell, I'd be interested to buy it. And my grandfather heard that he was going to sell it to someone else and said, we had a handshake. And he goes, you know what, you're right. The guy's kind of a jerk anyway. I'd rather sell it to you. And so in 1962, my grandfather took it over. So he was the second CEO. So I'm the 4th CEO in 107 years and the first female. So yeah, it's a great story. So it started super small, day trips, weekend getaways, things like that. And then it just expanded. Once my dad came in after college in the 70s, really just started expanding where we would sell to. We were more local Rhode Island at the time, expanded that. And then he took it international in the 80s. And from there, that's where the story really just grew.
Well, actually, I should clarify. It's a good point you mentioned just in terms of where you're located, because I drove past your office last year just before we were collaborating together and was astounded because I was in Rhode Island. I was like, oh my God, that's Colette's head office. So tell everybody where you are and how you came to be based there.
Yeah, so so we've always been based in Rhode Island. We've had different offices because we were also a travel agency at one point. So we were, small, like I said, small motor coach, and we had little offices in Massachusetts, but we were always New England based. But that's where my grandfather started it, and that's where we continue to support in the community that we are in today. But yeah, we're right off the highway on 95, and you get right at the Massachusetts border. So we're very visible when you go through. And there's Dunkin' right there off the exit, of course, like you'd always have in New England.
Of course, exactly. Yeah, I saw a lot of those when I was there
Fine
too.
fact.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, your background, I want to get into how you rose to be the CEO. Clearly, obviously, there's the family connection, but you've definitely earned it and deserved that opportunity. And I just want to understand your journey. So clearly you were kind of born into the family business, but take us through, if you wouldn't mind, how you decided ultimately to make travel your life. Because as I was, preparing for our conversation and looking at your background, you did your BA at Rhode Island, you got your MBA as well. Like, you've been in the business for a number of years. But yeah, tell us how you decided that you were going to commit your life to tourism and ultimately leading the family business.
Yeah, I mean, it's travel. So I have been around it all my life. I see it through my kids' eyes as they're growing up. You just see, I see sort of what I grew up what I saw as a child with my dad traveling and really expanding the business. Our kids are seeing us do that. But so I always knew I wanted to come into the business. Did I really understand what the business was when I was probably my kids' age and what responsibility that really meant? No, to be fair, to be honest. But I always did know I wanted to come into the business. But so during high school, during college, I would work there in the summers. Again, this is way like early computer days, right? So this is like filing and actual filing cabinets, things like that. You didn't have the technology the same way we do today. Doing things, like that. But I also in college, I would tour guide in the summers. So that was when I would do Montreal, Quebec tours. I would do our Maine clam bake. I would do our Penn Dutch tour. So these would be like 4-day, 4-night, 5-day tours. So I dabbled in the tour guiding side during my college years, but after college, it's a family rule that our board of advisors had established probably for my generation Gen 3 to the Sullivan family. We had to work outside the business for at least 3 years after we graduated university. So I did do that in a completely different space, tech space, publicly traded company. As soon as my 3 years was up, I came in and I started doing tour design and for the Eastern US product.
Well, that's what I found really interesting as well, because I wasn't clear on what you were doing before Collette, but I assumed, with a family business and having worked in a family business, as I was telling Jaclyn just before we started recording, working with the Tolman family and knowing the importance, the legacy, and getting the opportunity to work outside the business first before coming into the business is so important. I saw that with Pernod Ricard, another company I work closely with, the CEO very similarly that came into the business. But I wanted to also understand your journey within the business, because one of the things that really stood out to me, Jaclyn, about your background is that you did start on the product side, which I think is so important to understand the business. You were a product manager, then you were the director of product development. So tell us a little bit about that journey, because clearly you then understand the business fully by virtue of understanding how these tours and travel experiences are put together.
Yeah, I love the product side. It is fun. It's a great side of the business to be a part of. And when I came in back in 2005, so I'll be 20 years in May. Ooh, it's coming soon. But when I came in, we were actually probably what exists now as 5 different teams in our company today was rolled into one product manager position. It was the research, it was the design, it was dealing with the operation issues. I was contracting, I was setting up my trips to go out and vet all the potential suppliers that we would potentially use, what hotels we'd use in New York City for a New York City stay, and look. So that was the fun part of it. And so I did that for probably about 5 years. I did Eastern US, or a lot of the US actually at the beginning. And then I actually did Australia, New Zealand, and started South Pacific, which was great because I was out of New England in the winters, which is summer in Australia and New Zealand. So it was wonderful to go for multiple weeks at a time to contract and buy. But that was our model back then. We would fly people typically out of Rhode Island, and they would go all over Europe and they would go all over the world, which that's not our model anymore. We changed that in 2017. But back when I was doing that, that's what I did. So I started to learn the world, obviously Australia, New Zealand, and other parts as well as I went to sales meetings. And so, yeah, that was a good entryway into the business, let's say.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine it's a perfect way to get to know the business. And one of the things that's unique about Collette is that not only do you offer guided tours and coach tours, as we typically call them, but group tours. You have river cruises, you have safaris, and there's a real diversity to the product portfolio. And I think a lot of our listeners would have picked up on that, even hearing some of the ads I created for the Safari series, this guided touring series, and they'll hear in the River Cruise series as well. But I'd love for you to give a bit of an overview of the company. Obviously, we've talked about a bit about your role, a bit about the family history, but I would love to hear from your perspective, if you wouldn't mind providing our listeners a bit of an overview of Collette, and especially in terms of the product that you guys offer.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we were motor coach and we were much smaller back in the day, and we really expanded in the late 80s and in the 90s. That's where we really went international, starting in Europe, but really just expanding from there. And so we have many different travel styles. We have our classic product. We dabble in river cruise. We don't own river cruise. We don't own the ships, but we do have offering in the river cruise space. We know how popular it is, so we want to be relevant there. But and then we have our small group explorations. That actually, we had established that in 2008, but really post-pandemic, we're seeing that just grow as a travel style that people are looking for. Smaller group, just more niche secondary destinations, cities, things like that. So it's been great. So, but we have over 170 tours. Yeah, we span the globe. We have Antarctica, so we touch all 7 continents. And so there's a breadth of product and a travel style for everyone.
Well, it's interesting. The small group explorations, I know, speaking to some of your team members, just how that has taken off for you in the last 2 years. So I definitely want to get a bit more into, the product, how the business is evolving. But before we do, there's a couple of things I want to also understand about the journey you've been on, and specifically understanding how Collette differs to all the other guided touring brands that are out there. Because as any of our listeners know, it's certainly my background from G Adventures and working with Trafalgar and Insight and being very active in the space, advocating for the guided touring sector, even to the big OTAs, to try and convince them that there is a massive market here. It's growing. And these are certainly the things that you've known and seen. But I think we've both come up against the perception in this category that it is for the older generation that is aging out. And the reality is, actually, we're seeing a lot more young people embrace guided touring. And an interesting stat that I'd shared from ITB is that group touring is outpacing independent travel. And solo female travelers is a big factor, which is so I would love if you wouldn't mind giving us a bit of insight as to how Collette stacks up against the competition. And I guess what I'm really trying to get into is like those things I love, which is like the USPs is why someone will choose Collette over another guided touring company. So what are some of those things that you're very conscientious of that have been very intentionally built into the brand to make you stand out in the marketplace, attract great talent, and convince travelers to take not only their first trip with you, but to keep coming back?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, and you, like you said, you were in the guided travel space. It can be, there's a perception that, there's a perception just with guided travel that it's fixed. There's no free time. And I think that perception we've at Collette really worked to change that perception over the last decade for sure, but hyper focused within the last 7 to 8 years, I would say, of what that looks like and how do we break those stereotypes. But it's very hard to do in the guided travel space because you can kind of just put a stamp on something, but there's no regulation and necessarily follow through per se, right? And so what makes Collette unique and different and what we do to set ourselves apart, and it's intentional. Like I said before, we had everyone who lived in Rhode Island and we would fly them to their region of where they might design tours and negotiate the suppliers and all of that. We really are for travelers by travelers. I mentioned in 2017 that we sort of broke that model, but we started hiring people in destination. So example, my designer for Italy, who designs all of my Italy programs, lives just outside of Rome. My contractor for Italy lives actually in Spain, but he grew up in Italy. He's Italian. So they're in the destination. And so we use third parties and DMCs in some, like in the Egypts of the world in some places, but it's very rare because we really want to make sure that we own the brand experience and the customer experience. A lot of tour companies do go through ground operators or third parties. You're going to get more cookie cutter when you do that. And so the reason we have our philosophy the way we do is, one, to continue to manage the brand experience and customer experience, like I mentioned, but also to be able to hear specifically from our travelers what's working, what's not working, and be able to pivot and change the customer experience so that if we have more travelers coming and something really isn't working, why would I have hundreds, potentially thousands more travelers have that bad experience as well? So, but by having boots on ground in destination, we're able to react very quickly and also just know what are new trends that are coming, what are, what's, whether it's a hotel or a new supplier coming online that's going to be a really great experience for the travelers. Being able to have boots on ground that are just in the know of information all the time is one of the big pieces I think that we focus on and continue to invest in and support to create the best experience that we can. We're listening to our travelers all the time. We listen to our partners, but we listen to our travelers. That evolves our brand standards and how we design the guided travel experience. We know that people do not want to be sitting on a coach and they'd rather be off the coach. So as much as possible, we've started to really focus on pacing. If you open brochures and see multiple one-night stays, you should close it. You should close the brochure, close the website, because it's likely not going to be the best experience. When people are typically going round trip Rome, those tour companies, I would call them typically more standard, and they're putting you on the coach for longer hours than necessary. So trying to be unique and be different in the ways that we approach the full design to optimize the travelers. They're paying to go on these great vacations. And I always say, what they think they want when they're purchasing and then what they tell us post experience is a little bit different. So trying to bridge that early and then help train and advise why it's best not to be on coach or do round trip cities, working that way.
We'll be right back. We'd like to give a big shout out to our friends and episode sponsor, Stay 22, as they've just dropped a game-changing solution for travel publishers and bloggers, and it's called the Script Builder. It's the simplest way to start earning from your content. One script, all your links, all your suppliers. You don't need traffic minimums or approval. Just plug it in and start monetizing smarter, not harder. Just visit stay22.com/traveltrends and try their Script Builder today. It's free, and trust me, your future self will thank you. Check out stay22.com/traveltrends for more information. Attention travel operators, destination management companies, and accommodation providers. Managing payments doesn't have to be a source of stress. Meet Flywire, the modern payments platform built specifically for the unique needs of the travel industry. With Flywire, you can collect payments from travelers worldwide with ease. Enjoy faster payouts in your preferred currency, reduce payment fees, and offer your guests flexible, localized payment options they're familiar with. Not only does Flywire simplify your operations, but it also helps elevate your guest experience and boost your bottom line. That means you can stop worrying about payments and focus on what you do best, creating unforgettable travel experiences. Discover how Flywire can help your business save time, save money, and deliver truly seamless transactions. Visit flywire.com/traveltrends to learn more. That's flywire.com/traveltrends. Did you know that over 20% of people who purchase a ticket will upgrade to a refundable option when given the choice? By offering Refund Protect, you make it easy for your customers to protect their ticket purchase against emergency circumstances like illness, injury, accidents, and more. Whether you're an airline, hotel group, tour operator, ticketing platform, OTA, or transport solution, when you partner with Protect Group, your customers get peace of mind and you generate extra revenue. With a Trustpilot score of 4.8 stars and over 31,000 reviews, they treat your customers as their own, earning the highest customer ratings in the industry. To find out more, check out Protect Group at protect.group. That's protect.group. And now, back to the show. The other thing I'd like to ask you, just in terms of that Collette difference in the types of customers you attract, is who the audience typically is for Collette tours and how you've seen that evolving in the last few years, because I'm sure that there's a wide range of ages and types of travelers that take Collette trips.
Yeah, I mean, And one other thing I wanted to mention too is the one big difference that I should have mentioned is we're 100% focused on guided travel. That is what we do. We don't own hotels. Like I said, we dabble in river cruise, but we don't own the river cruise. We have a partner. So we are really making sure that we continue to trailblaze and pioneer the guided travel space. I think, sorry, that was an important one that I missed on. But who our traveler is typically it's average age of about 65, semi-retired, retired. But to your point, it has shifted. And again, depending on the time of year, in our summer months, you're definitely going to see more multi-gen. And we've really seen that in our data and looking at what are the ages of our travelers in different times of the year. So you do have, you were talking before, you have fraternal twins, and for high school graduations, you see a lot of times parents or grandparents who are taking their grandkids, whether it's high school graduation, college graduation, and doing these big once in a lifetime trips. So you do see a lot of that. And multi-gen for sure is expanding, and it has been growing for quite a while. And there are the Africas, which we've been doing for 3 decades, and that some of those destinations are the perfect multi-gen destinations because there is something for everyone. And who doesn't want to see an elephant? And I don't care if you're in your 70s or your 80s or if you're 14 like my boys. It's awe. You're just in awe no matter what. So there is something for everyone, but it does vary based on times of the year.
In terms of the guided touring brands that have been able to reinvent themselves, remain contemporary, and answer what it is that travelers are seeking today are clearly the ones that are thriving. And I know Collette is, and which is why it's great to have this conversation and also the partnership, because I think when I looked at how your product was evolving and talking to Ron and a couple members of your team, and I've sat through training sessions because I was overseeing the rollout of Global Journeys in North America and their Toronto office. And so I've seen the team be trained on Collette, and there's many things that stood out to me that have been quite impressive about the brand. And the specific thing that I wanted to get into a bit more is this concept of guided touring being reimagined, where you get a chance to eat in locals' homes. You can do cooking classes. You don't just travel by coach. You actually get on trains or you ride on tuk-tuks. And I think this is the part for me that I always loved about adventure travel, like brands like Intrepid and G Adventures. And so it's exciting for me when I see a brand like Collette that is not only going small group, but also better connecting with locals, which clearly is one of the things that that travelers are seeking. They love being able to travel amongst a group, even though they have apprehensions about it, who's going to be in the group. And but once they actually get on the trip and they start realizing that, wait a second, these are people, I'm surrounded by my tribe, or I'm surrounded by the type of people that have an interest in foreign travel. And so by and large, there are like-minded individuals. So you're going to, you connect with the people you're traveling with, but then you want to connect with locals. So that's the part I want to get into. And it's part of the reason, Jaclyn, I wanted to mention about your background, understanding product development and how critical that is to the successful delivery of guided tours. So tell us a little bit about what that actually means to you when we say the words that we're focused on integrating local culture and making it a authentic guided touring experience. Tell us a little bit how you've gone on that journey and what some of the experiences are on a guided tour with Collette that really bring that to life.
Yeah, no, and that to me, that's a great one because there are, like I said earlier, anyone can kind of stamp on local experience. Of course, if you're traveling to France, we can all call everything a local experience. That's again where the boots on ground become really important because anyone can do a home hosted, but you're going to go through sometimes more of the cookie cutter experience or a staged experience. What we really are breaking barriers on is, again, this is where the boots on ground are so critical, is making sure that we're away from those staged, larger companies that can take multiple groups at a time and have that cultural experience, but it's a staged cultural experience. And I think that has been, for sure it does, I think, stem from my coming into product and seeing how we design tours, but then listening to the travelers and seeing what their expectations are and really marrying the two to make sure that we're putting tours together and create tours that people want to experience again and again, but in different destinations. So we have impact moments that we have integrated definitely on all of this or most of the small group explorations. But we have our tour through Egypt and Jordan. So we're going to visit Al Ezra's kitchen, and we're going to have a cooking class. We're going to experience a local Jordanian family, and we're going to do a cooking class with them. And the best part of those is it is only Collette. It is typically they're not working with other tour companies. They may be in some cases, but typically not. It's just Collette when we're there. But the best part when you do those is you're, one, getting a cultural experience because you're learning how to cook something, in their culture. But then you're meeting the family and able to talk and ask very honest questions and have very honest conversations. One of the things that we do on our small group explorations, and it's intentional, is we have what are called crucial conversations. So we can talk about things that might be seen as potentially political or, where as Americans, we might have certain perceptions, but we do it in a comfortable space where there's no judgment, but we really will ask some of the hard questions that either as Americans or Canadians or Australians, which are the markets we operate out of, that, what would we want to know? And might have questions about of their religions or their upbringings or holidays or past wars and their perceptions on it, or their points of view from being local. So those are the things that you can't really bring to life in an itinerary with the words, but those are the experiences that travelers are writing about when they tell us in the survey. And those are the experiences that they're definitely going home and telling their friends about, that really made it different. And again, it's just, people don't want staged anymore. And that's the challenge again with the guided travel space is you definitely have the 5-star, we know who that is, but then a lot of them are really standard. There's a lot of more money coming out of your pocket when you're on tour. A lot of days that might have no paid inclusions, and you can see that quickly by view. If you're not seeing visit, and it's not getting into deep, like there are so many ways to make a traveler or consumer think that you're going to get all this value, but you're not getting it to the way maybe you intend to. And that's where we want to just be upfront and honest with our travelers and making sure they know exactly what they're getting when they travel with Collette.
Well, and that's the difference between a legacy brand that is modernized, but also relies heavily on repeat business. And the only way they're able to do that is by delivering on the experience, because you're absolutely right. And that's where sometimes you get bad actors. And I think there's less and less in our space, but there certainly has been over time where people have had a negative experience with a guided touring because the price seemed reasonable. And then they're paying for all of these optionals and they're staying outside of town, not in the city. And but some of those are factors of that's why it was the price it was. Helping customers understand the value for money and what they're actually getting. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about too, Jaclyn, is sustainability, given just how important that has become for travelers post-pandemic. People have become certainly more conscientious, but also it seems to be more and more that travelers are making decisions with sustainability in mind. They're looking at companies that align with their values, or they're just aware of their impact. And so I was keen to know, beyond certainly small groups is a big step in that direction, taking local transport, and even some of the local experiences we were just talking about, where you're actually putting money into a destination, unlike some of the big ocean cruise lines that are not contributing to the local economies. So already there's an advantage of traveling guided. But yeah, tell us some of the initiatives that you have and how Collette is approaching sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways you can approach sustainability, especially in travel, right? To your point. But that is like when we're choosing accommodations, definitely across all travel styles. So whether it's larger group or smaller group, when we can, we want to, I don't necessarily want to be in the big box hotel chains that we're used to and have comfort to here. Where we come from. And so when we can support a family owned hotel, or that one is going to be one family owned, but it's going to, so you're supporting the local economy, but you're also contributing to the community that they live in. And the other piece on sustainability, I mean, there's a lot here, but that we can unpack. But the other one is on small groups and some of the others as well. The secondary cities. I mean, obviously we're supporting the Romes and the Florences and the Parises and, the big cities. All the tour companies are going in there. But to go to some of those secondary cities, like we have the Puglia tour now in Italy, that wasn't really on the map a couple years ago. But going into some of those smaller villages, we're helping again to support other local communities through tourism. But in other ways, obviously, we eliminated all use of single-use plastic on tour as best we could. I mean, it has impact on the places that we're traveling to. One of the things we're also doing is we have a compost program at headquarters. So we're headquartered here out of Rhode Island in the U.S., but we also have our offices in Mississauga and Vancouver and Sydney, Australia. But we have partnered with Epic Renewal, which is a local composting company. It's based in Pawtucket, which is where we're actually headquartered, in Central Falls, which is a nearby community. The partnership is facilitated through Social Enterprise Greenhouse, SEG, for anyone who might be familiar with them. And they are absolutely amazing. They have an absolutely amazing network of over 1,000 enterprises and work with over 200 businesses. So trying to educate and being more mindful even in our local community with our employees, and trying to have them understand and helping them understand the impact that we have on our on our environment it's critical. And we put solar panels on our wellness center. I think that happened in the fall of 2024. So that happened just not too long ago. So, in those ways, we're being sustainable, not only globally on tour, examples, but also at headquarters and other, all of our remote offices as well, with the impact that we as an employer and employees can make.
Yeah, that's great. I know certainly from being on the inside, there's advocates internally. So you got your customers giving you feedback, your product team, and then employees inside the organization that are saying, here are some of the things that we can do to be more sustainable, and also even just approaching our trip experience. And that's one of the things I was actually also keen to get your feedback on, just in terms of how much customer feedback impacts the tour offerings. And if you coming up in that space and seeing how it's evolved in the last few years, I mean, especially some of the things we've talked about, not just sustainability, but the small group touring, and as you mentioned, going into river cruise, even though not having your own ships. But yeah, I guess what I'm keen to know is how you do factor in customer feedback to shape your overall approach, but specifically your new tour offerings, or how you make adjustments to the product. How do you guys do that, and how important is that to Collette?
Oh, it's extremely important to us. That's where I come from. My background is understanding and listening to the traveler, but we have our partners as well, and listening to what our partners' needs are. And so there's the traveler, and so we have our surveys. Like I said, we're listening to what they're telling us every single day. My product design team is in those surveys for their regions every single day to see what's working, what's not working, what do we need to be changing. That's who's paying at the end of the day, and they're the ones who are evolving into what their expectations are. And if we're assuming that we know internally what the travelers want, then I'm going to say we're being lazy and we're being ignorant. So it really is about making sure that those that are paying for the experience and will provide you the feedback. We have a high survey return rate because it is not inexpensive to travel. And if people loved it, they want you to know that they loved it. If they loved their tour manager, typically they usually do, and you have high kudos on the tour managers. They want you to know that. And if they didn't like something, they also very clearly want to make sure that we are aware of what they didn't like. And then we just look for patterns. Did everyone not like it? Was this a one-off? Did something happen that would have impacted a departure date? So we don't just, we don't act on every single bit of feedback, but we do look for patterns. We do look for big issues, hot issues that we would need to address, some in the next product season, and some, like I said, immediately. Especially coming out of the pandemic, it was huge because if you remember, there was a lot of, we didn't have the same service levels in hospitality. And I remember we were running our New Orleans Spotlight tour, and the first departure that we had, we got a feedback from pretty much all the travelers that, the services weren't there at the hotels, whether it was for the breakfast, for the, room cleaning, whatever. And we made the decision to move hotels until our partner hotel could get their service levels back to where they needed to be for our travelers. And so eventually we did move back, and we recognized it was a challenging year for many at the time. But that's the impact that we can have, because just because 30 people had a terrible experience, I'm not going to let another 200, 300, 400 people have it, knowing that we didn't have the service levels. So that's the gift of feedback. That's the gift of information.
Yeah, I think one of the things that also has stood out to me is I got to know Brett Walker and Ron Lonsdale, who run the Canadian office and team in Mississauga, of course. And I'm based in Toronto, so I've had a chance to get together with them a number of times over the last year and really get to know the brand that much better. And one of the things in my previous role was this concept of the 10-year wallet, where you were looking across the data of all your customers, because it's one thing in terms of what they tell you, and it's another thing to look at what they do and the types of trips that they book. And so my big focus was this concept of lifetime customer value. I'm sure you have something very similar at Collette, where you're, conscientious of making sure that, over the course of 10 years, we were trying to make sure they traveled within the Travel Corporation group of brands. So they take an African safari one year, a river cruise the next, a guided tour. And so, but part of that was looking at the data and just trying to understand their travel patterns. So it's interesting when you mentioned that. And that's one of the things I was keen to ask you about, is that, how do you at Collette follow the data? How are you leveraging technology today to make sure that you are customizing the offerings and making sure that you are promoting the right product to the right people at the right time, so that they see that, oh, this is the year to go to Japan? My father-in-law, who's going to be taking a Collette soon, he is, as soon as we started working together and I told him all about Collette, because he's traveled with Insight before and Rick Steves and with Trafalgar and Globus. Anyway, he's super excited to take his first Collette trip, and he was doing all his research on the website, and he's like torn right now between going to Japan and Africa, and I'm still waiting for his final decision. But for him, he thrives on getting emails with reminders about trips. And that's exactly how he used to always book an Insight Vacations trip before. So I always found it really exciting when he would tell me that he got an email about a destination. And I was like, yeah, actually we engineered that way, right? It's like you're trying to make sure you get the right message in front of travelers to inspire them to travel. So how do you approach that at Collette? What sort of data are you using? And is there any insights that have surprised you about your travelers?
Ooh, insights that surprised me. I'll think on that one. That's a good question. Coming from, and we have a lot of data. We've really built up our data warehouse over the last, oh gosh, well over 5 years. But having, a data team that we're also dealing with legacy systems. There's a lot of technology in the works right now for self-service systems to just the whole pre-customer journey, on tour, post-tour. To your point, there's so many, especially in our space, because when they're choosing the travel, it's so much earlier than when the actual travel takes place. So there's such a big anticipation phase that can really be. We can be engaging. We can be like get people excited about where they're going, where they chose to go, movie recommendations, book recommendations, just little bits of things. So there are, to that point, there's so much opportunity. But yeah, there's a lot that we have in the works right now with technology and investment with technology to continue to improve based on just even the partner expectations, but definitely the traveler expectations. So there's a lot of that's going on right now. As far as, well, the one thing I'll say of what you asked about traveler trends, anything that's surprised me. Actually, I don't know if it didn't really surprise me, but pre-pandemic, the tours that were really popular were the same tours that came back post-pandemic. Our traveler demographic didn't psychographically change. For the most part, Japan was a top tour. It still continues to be a top tour. Iceland was a top tour, still continues to be. Ireland, Italy. So all the places that people wanted to go. The only difference I would say is that people are traveling longer, and they continue to do that. Definitely out of Australia, they used to have a lot of back-to-back. So people are spending more time when they're deciding to go. but yeah, I don't know if the travelers are they're just set on to where they want to go. I mean, if they were a Europe traveler and Africa just never seemed in their spectrum to our comfort level to go to, the pandemic for them didn't psychographically change them to be like, I want to go to Africa now. They still want to go to Europe.
Well, one question along those lines, I'm keen to know. So one of the trends for sure, as you just highlighted, was that after the pandemic, people rushed to get back to the destinations that they couldn't get to because all of a sudden, once travel was taken away from you, as soon as you had the opportunity to travel again, you were going to do that trip to Japan or that trip to Italy. And of course, one of the things that we did see was that there was, some challenges with over tourism and in some cases just climate change, the weather, so Italy was overheated and overcrowded. And then people started looking at other destinations. One of the things that I would be keen to know from Colette's perspective is that after we had that revenge travel, and this is where I never liked that term. I'm sure you don't care for it either. It's just someone coined it and everyone started using it.
Yep.
And and then everyone's talking about, oh, revenge travel's exhausted. And it's like, well, the reality is that travelers now, when you've had something taken away from you, you're no longer going to take it for granted. And one of the things that I've certainly seen, and again, keen to get your take on this, is that people are traveling more frequently and not putting them off. So even if they're going to the same destinations, they're traveling with more intensity. They're traveling longer, as you mentioned. That's certainly a trend that we've seen.
Yeah.
But are you seeing that it's reducing the time in between trips? Because we always used to look at this like it was more like 18 months. Sometimes, people wouldn't necessarily take a guided tour every year, but they might take one every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would start to market to them about 18 months after their first trip, not thinking that we lost them. It's just a longer lead cycle for a return trip. So I'm actually just generally curious if you've seen anything along those lines as travels continue to surge. Have you seen that your travelers are traveling more frequently? They're booking again, like within 6 months or within a year, or that they're picking new destinations in addition to that as you're launching these new programs? Because I certainly know that the small group programs has just taken off. I think Ron was telling me it was up 70% year over year. And I was keen to know if that is existing customers choosing that, or is that new customers coming into Collette?
For the small group, it's a bit of both. It's definitely new. We're good at acquiring, and so there are definitely new travelers, and I would say some of the classic travelers that have tried the small group explorations and enjoyed the small group exploration.
We'll be right back. Our longtime listeners will be very familiar with TravelAI.com, one of our sponsors from the very beginning. They've sponsored the last 2 seasons and also our AI Summit. You might actually remember they were recently featured in Season 4, the 2 co-founders, John Leotier and Chris Jensen, live from Focusrite, where they shared how their innovative use of AI is reshaping the travel industry. If you missed it, we highly recommend going back to hear their inspiring story of building one of the fastest growing, profitable AI companies in travel, entirely bootstrapped. Travel AI is revolutionizing the industry by blending AI-powered efficiency with personalized, human-centered travel experiences. From micro-segmentation to tailored travel solutions, their mission is to enhance every traveler's journey while setting the pace for travel's future. Here's how you can join the exciting mission. If you or someone you know in tech or AI is looking for a new career that combines innovation and impact, then head to travelai.com or follow them on LinkedIn to explore more opportunities. They are growing fast. Thanks again for your continued support. In today's fast-paced travel industry, businesses face constant challenges, keeping up with new technologies, meeting ever-evolving customer expectations, and promoting products effectively. The real struggle? Managing it all in-house. That's where Travel Tech steps in to transform your business. With over 25 years of experience, Travel Tech is one of the most trusted names in travel technology, offering tailored solutions to fit your unique needs. They make it easy to create seamless, bookable websites, manage and promote products, and automate everyday tasks, giving your team more time to focus on what matters most, your customers. Plus, Travel Tech is the go-to name in cruise technology with cutting-edge solutions for tour operators as well. Plus, Travel Tech has just launched Tech Talk, a new podcast for travel professionals by travel professionals. Explore the stories behind the biggest innovations in travel. Visit traveltech.com/traveltrends or tune in to Tech Talk on Spotify and Apple. That's traveltech.com/traveltrends and Tech Talk on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Are you looking for ways to grow your travel business through paid media and optimized SEO? Then you have to check out our friends at Propellic.com. They are the leading digital agency for growth in travel and tourism. Propellic offers bold digital marketing strategies to ensure your travel company's success. They have a remarkable methodology that has actually been implemented by travelai.com, and they are a leading SEO agency globally and offer a range of resources, a podcast of their own, a blog on their website, propellic.com. That's propellic.com. And don't forget to mention Travel Trends for your free marketing audit. Now, back to the show. Jaclyn, I'm so enjoying this conversation. I want it to continue. I know I need to be mindful overall of time. So hopefully we can make this part 1 of 2 and have you back in season 6 as well. But because I'm sure our audience is going to want to continue on this path of guided touring. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you as part of our discussion is where Collette is headed in the future with guided touring. I know we've talked a lot about the category, a bit about the history, but where do you see this category 5 years from now? What is your vision, I guess, for 2030 in terms of like new destinations, how the product will evolve? You know, what does the future of guided touring look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the small group explorations will continue to grow and become a bigger piece of the portfolio. It's doing really well. Travelers are clearly stating and telling us that they enjoy it. It scores higher excellence. And the way that we can design those programs are we don't take our classic and just make it smaller group. We actually curate the entire tour experience differently from all of the selections of everything we do. So that in and of itself makes for a different experience when you go small group. So I think that will continue to evolve. There haven't been a lot of players in the small group space in B2B. I think we were somewhat of a late adopter to not Collette. I think we were actually early in the space. I don't think that the B2B side was ready, but the reason that we launched explorations in the small group was because there were so many direct to consumer companies that did it, and you know that they did it in big number, in really large volume. And so for Collette, we felt that we were missing a brand and an opportunity to support the advisors and the B2B community with that small group. So I think now that it's sort of taken off, I think that's where we'll continue to see the evolution of the guided travel space.
Well, it's clear to me that Collette will continue to lead the way, not only in terms of being a great brand with a really all-star team. I know many of her colleagues and certainly with yourself leading this business. That was one of the things I actually wanted to say, because I want to give you the last word to let people know where to find out more information about Collette. Obviously, we've mentioned gocollette.com, but in terms of connecting with you and the team. And the one other thing I just want to say, Jaclyn, not only am I thrilled to have this opportunity to meet you, because this is our first time. I've got to know your husband, Christian, over the last year. I was raised by a single mom, so I was so adamant that I was just like, I wanted to make sure that we had female leadership on the guided touring series, because otherwise we do have 3 male leaders. And so I appreciate you making yourself available for this conversation. Obviously, it's great to get the view from your perspective. And the one thing I just wanted to highlight to our listeners as well is that, you know, Jaclyn has a young family. She's got twins. She's got a 12-year-old. So I think one of the things that stood out to me, not only do you work for a family-owned company, but you are running a business with a young family. And I know how challenging, I have a good sense of how challenging that can be, but I just wanted to recognize that, because obviously I want to see more leaders, certainly female leaders, have that opportunity. And so to be there for both, for your family and for the business, and, you know, to develop your professionally, which clearly you're doing. So yeah, it's a real honor to meet you. I thank you for making the time in our partnership, but I want to make sure that people can connect with you or the team. So where else would you point them to, Jaclyn?
First, thank you very much. It's never easy, but it is possible. So for anyone out there that thinks it isn't, it really is. And yeah, so thank you again for having me. It's been great. I'm sorry that you've gotten to know my husband more over the last 12 months.
I really enjoy his company. He's a football player, and now I actually know that you're a dog lover too. So I regard you even that much higher, because we both got dogs in the background of our.
Oh yeah, Penny's snoring a little bit in the background. She's a cutie. But yeah, no, I again appreciate it. GoCollette.com. We also going to your travel advisors and having contact with your BDM, your business development manager, to help support you in any way that they can. We have one of the largest sales force in all of North America. And so they're there to support the advisor community and help train, understand who Collette is, how we're evolving in the space. So yeah, great things in the past, great things coming ahead. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I'm looking forward to as well, not only my family traveling Collette, but I'm going to have the opportunity shortly as well. We've tried to make it work over in Europe, but we're going to do that sometime this summer. So I'm looking forward to having the Collette experience myself and understanding the Collette difference. So, real pleasure, real honor to meet you, Jaclyn. And thank you so much for all the support. And yeah, look forward to keeping in touch with you and your husband. Thanks so much for joining us on our latest episode of Travel Trends. I hope you're enjoying our deep dive into the world of guided touring. I certainly thoroughly enjoyed the conversation that you just heard with Jaclyn Leibl-Cote, the CEO of Collette. Thanks again to Jaclyn, Christian, Paul, Julie, and Ron, who have been terrific to work with over at Collette. And as I mentioned, my father-in-law is traveling shortly with Collette, and hopefully my mother is going to be shortly as well. And I look certainly forward to having the opportunity to experience Collette. So thanks again to the team for our partnership. And on our next episode, we're actually going to head over to London, England to speak to the managing director of Explore Worldwide, Michael Edwards. Now, Michael and I had the privilege to work together at G Adventures a number of years ago. He went on to Intrepid and then to lead Explore, which is the third largest adventure travel brand. And I was really keen to bring adventure into the mix for this guided touring series, just given the significant growth of this overall category. And the reality is that adventure touring is, of course, part of guided multi-day tours. So I'm really looking forward to bringing the conversation with Michael next week. They have an extraordinary team. They've just launched in North America. And so make sure that you are subscribed on the streaming platform of your choice to be notified when new episodes go live. So do that on Spotify or Apple. And then also don't forget that we do send out a monthly newsletter, which you can register for at traveltrendspodcast.com, where we summarize all the latest episodes, as we'll do with the guided touring series, and give highlights of our upcoming travel plans and the events we're going to be attending for the next month. So you can hopefully meet us while we're out on the road. And we do have a few big events coming up. We're going to be at the Aviation Festival in Miami at the beginning of May, and then the Adventure Travel and Trade Association Conference at the end of May in Denver. And then starting in June, we're going to be at the Focusrite Europe Conference in Barcelona, June 10th to 12th. So hopefully many of you can join us there. There is a link to a €100 discount on the homepage of our website. If you still need to grab a ticket, that's the best way to do it. And thanks again to our series sponsor, Tour Optima. If you want to learn more details, check out touroptima.com or just send an email to ben@touroptima.com to arrange a demo of their white label app, which is absolutely fit for purpose for multi-day tour brands. So be sure to check them out. And until next week, safe travels.